Do I need to say that we're about to waste an hour?
Oh man, give the intro. Go, JRuss, go.
Hold on.
Oh man, too late. Everybody's sitting here waiting, listening. No intro. You're just staring at the camera, not saying anything. Everybody wait. They don't even know what show they're watching because you won't tell them. They don't know what podcast they're listening to.
I'm
They don't
posting
know
on
what's going
Facebook,
on.
social media that we're about to.
All right. Well, JRuss won't say it. You're listening
welcome
to
the Crave Show.
There it is. Finally,
with Chris and JRuss. And I was so busy posting, and a lot of times old people struggle with technology, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do two things at once.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Yeah,
I totally get it. You and me both. We're both getting old, dude. It's not just
you. What are you gonna do? It happens.
You're gonna get old. That's what you're gonna do.
Yeah, man. The alternative isn't that great. So, yeah, just keep on trucking. It's such an interesting thing. Of like, I had a conversation with unimportant. I had a conversation with a friend about just I don't think I regret too many things in my life, but just the idea that my grandparents were alive for the first 25 or 28 years of my life. And towards the end of their lives, I started spending more time with them and going to their house more often. And then eventually my grandmother was in an assisted living situation. And I went to see her. I mean, it's hard to say as often as I could, but kind of as often as I could. And just the idea that that when I was younger and they were part of my life, they're just my grandparents, and it's great, and we go see them, and it's fun. But it wasn't until the end of my grandmother's life that I really sat down and talked to her just as a human being, and like, what was your life like? I found out all this interesting stuff. She ended up kind of losing her mind at the end, last couple of years. But before that, she's a super sharp lady, and just the idea that there are these people in our lives that when we're young, we just look at them as just old, and certainly my 20-year-old self looking at, say, me at 52 would be like, man, you're about to die, and yet now that I'm this age, I don't really feel that old, and I'm still functioning pretty well, and body feels pretty good despite all the crap I put it through. And I think that it's touching on kind of what the definition of wisdom is, right? Because you cannot inject wisdom into anyone. They have to just earn it on their own. And I wish, to be honest, that I had earned it a little bit sooner so that I could have appreciated those people that were, yes, they were old, but they were, great human beings. And I could have learned, I learned a lot, but I could have learned a lot more about them.
Yeah. That was really out of the blue. What made you think of that?
Well, just saying that we're both getting
80's
old,
movies and all. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just that we're both getting older, and sometimes I'll say I have nephews or young people that I meet. My friends have kids, and I can feel it in them, like, so I got to hang around with these old people for a while, and then I'm going to go do whatever fun stuff I want to do, which is exactly what I thought when I was a kid. And
you wait to sneak off and get out of here.
Yeah, just this is dull as dirt, what they're talking about, and I just want to go have fun and be on, my device or whatever. Yeah, and then that segues, and of course we can move on to other things. But I got a book for my nephew for Christmas that is called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and it just, like, he's loving it. It's his first time reading it. I've read it a couple of times. It's a great book, but just the idea that even though we don't have that maybe wisdom to appreciate the what we can learn from older people, that there are these amazing individuals who wrote their thoughts down. And, Marcus Aurelius was, I don't know, 2,500 years ago or something, but we can still hear his voice. We can still read his thoughts. And I think it's a really interesting time in the world that there's a great possibility that there's a whole generation coming up where their entire life will be documented. And then that, for good, for better or worse, that's going to be posterity into the future of the ability for people to learn from the mistakes or wisdom of other
the experiences
ages.
Yeah, Yeah,
you know.
dude, that's cool. That's very cool. I was reading, C.S. Lewis. Do you
Sure. Yeah.
ever read any of his stuff?
Yeah.
Um,
Bunch.
I was reading something of his the other day, and he was talking about the value of reading old books.
Hmm.
And he was talking about, he's like, the old books, they're so valuable because they have stood the test of time. They've actually come out of their social milieu, like their era, and they have withstood. And
Yeah.
so that pretty much I'm not going to say everybody, not everybody, but everybody has said, yes, this is a good book. Let's hold on to this. Let's keep reading it. Let's keep sharing it with people. And he was like, I mean, he actually said, to be certain, to be honest, there's obviously books like that right now in our time. We just don't know which ones they are. We don't
Yeah.
know which ones will. And he goes, and there's books in the future, but we can't get to those yet. But it was just such a cool way for him to say it and to kind of preface it, or like a way for him to frame it, I guess. Like what you're saying, like, wow, there's so much to learn if you know the right people to listen to, or
Which
or
is
what
tough.
you what you want to learn, the right subject or whatever. But so cool. Yeah.
And we've got an hour, and we're gonna waste it anyway. So, what do you think that there's anything that can be written that should be banned, that should be not allowed to be in print?
Oh man, I don't know if I ever thought about that question. Um,
Because
can
obviously
you
there's people that
like
want to ban books and
prime me a little bit? Why would I maybe say yes? There is. What would be a reason that I would say yeah? Oh yeah, you shouldn't be able to write this, or what? I'm not sure. I've never thought about that question, so I
well,
like
if
it.
we were Joe Rogan and we had Jamie sitting in the background, I would ask him to
Mm-hmm.
pull up a list of like prohibited books. But like
Yeah.
Harry Potter books are prohibited in places because of the witchcraft and wizardry, and students casting spells against other students, and the fear that will inspire, I guess, I don't know, violence or enmity between
Mm-hmm.
kids. Even though, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, the this the messages, the underlying themes in Harry Potter are about making hard choices and supporting your friends and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing things that are fast and easy way, as opposed to the perhaps the
Working for something.
working
Yeah.
for something. Yeah. But many people advocate for banning Harry Potter. Things like, I want to say, Animal Farm has been banned in the past. And then you get into interesting things like Mein Kampf and the thoughts of someone like Hitler. Should those be banned? Should
I
we
wouldn't.
not
I
be
mean,
able to read those things?
so I'll just tell you my knee jerk reaction is no, we shouldn't ban. No, I mean somebody should be able to write whatever they want. I think.
And
Um,
is there a line when someone's writing? And I guess this is coming into play a little bit in social media, where YouTube or really any platform other than what's Twitter called now? X? Is that right?
Twitter's not called Twitter.
No, it's something new. I think it's called
Oh,
X. But anyway, it's Twitter. Everybody knows it's Twitter, and now it's got a new name. But
okay.
I think they're the only platform that isn't censoring based on the whatever the dogma or ideology is, and the people who are behind the scenes. And
Mm-hmm.
so for platforms like YouTube, if you say something that's outside of what they say is okay, you can
Yeah.
be de-incentivized or demonetized or
Yeah.
banned altogether, blah blah blah, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. I mean, I think there should be a limit on what we can say and write, but only when it only really calls to violence or I mean, if somebody feels like white people are the master race, I don't agree, but I feel like they should be able to write down their thoughts and have
Mm-hmm.
the right to express themselves, as long as it's not calling for the Holocaust, of course,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or even violence towards one person. But then I think otherwise that would be one of the few restrictions I would place on that. But
Yeah, I
um,
think I would say something very similar. Yeah, because my thought is like, let them write it down and let's talk about it. Like, by all means, let's talk about it.
yeah,
If especially if you don't agree with it, you should be willing to talk about it. It seems like to me, because it seems like that's the only way that we can move forward is by talk. At least that's how I think at least that's how it feels in my body, in my
Yeah.
mind, as I'm talking about things, like as I'm actually voicing and saying my thoughts out loud. There's something happening, like I'm actually processing and changing and thinking. And sometimes I'll say something out loud and I'll be like, oh shoot, that was a really stupid thing to say. And so then I have to like, okay, wait a minute. That's what I said. Now, do I really believe that? Do I own up to that? Do I stand by that? Or no, hold on. Now that I say it out loud and hear it, that's stupid. No, I don't think that, but
And don't you think, in addition, that if you have these thoughts that, I don't know, don't go in the mainstream, which does, you don't have to be in the mainstream, of course, but like, if you have these thoughts or feelings or desires or whatever, and you keep them all internalized, it's very easy to have your own little echo chamber of like, oh, this is okay. Like, I'm normal. I should think these things. But if you voice them, if you give voice to them and you're not instantly shut down or shunned or demonized for saying them, I mean, there's people out there who believe. Have you heard of incel men? Involuntarily celibate, like, and I don't want to really call attention to this group, but the tenets of their group is insane to me. Like, women are evil and they should be just baby producing things, and they should be our sex slaves, and blah 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 blah. If you don't allow those bad ideas to come out into the open, how do we address them? Do we push them into a corner where only few people are reinforcing each other, and then the idea lives on? We don't get a chance to say, hey guys, there's nothing wrong with women. Like, you guys need to look in the mirror.
Yeah, like
but
women are pretty awesome.
Yeah, women are pretty awesome.
I love women.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to have sex with women, they're still pretty awesome. They're half the freaking human race, Yeah, okay. Well, we can now. I've been on my little tirade, so if we want to go, I don't even know how we got started on this. But
I want to go back to, okay, so for all the audience, if you're actually listening to us, a minute ago before we started recording, we were talking about, well, that was really interesting what we were talking about, but we were also talking about 80s movies.
80s movies.
So I just want to say, we mentioned, or JRuss brought up The Breakfast Club. I mentioned, what did I say?
You
Can't Buy Me Love.
Can't Buy Me Love. There was another Corey Haim,
and then Dream a Little Dream.
Dream a Little Dream. The Lost Boys.
If you're in, you said The Lost Boys. I need to go back and watch that.
That's a good one.
That's a good one, man. Yeah. Who else in that? So we got, in that one is Kiefer Sutherland.
Kiefer.
Corey Haim.
Other than Corey Haim,
Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman, and then who was the mom was kind of a semi-famous actress, but I wouldn't remember her name.
Okay, I'm fit to look it up. All right, real quick, if you're listening to this episode, would you please send us a comment on YouTube or somewhere, Facebook, I don't care, Instagram, somewhere, of your favorite 80s movie. I need to be reminded of some really good ones. 80s movies. What movie were we just talking about? Lost Boys.
Lost Boys.
All right, who do you want to know? Jamie Gertz, she was in it. Who else was? You were saying the mom? Well, is that what you said?
There was Kiefer Sutherland, but then there was also some of the. Who are the other bad guys? Famous bad guys. And then the main character, good dude, that kind of became a vampire. I don't know if he was ever in anything else.
Oh, I don't know if he was, man.
So
Bernard Hughes. Oh, Diane Wiest.
I don't know. She the brunette, the cute brunette that was the main female.
No, that's Jamie Gertz. I think you're thinking of Diane Wiest. I don't know I don't remember what character she was. Anyways, that's funny.
Take this down. So the other day we had. Is that any better? A little. We had a podcast with Andy Malchiotti, and he wears glasses that are like, he actually spent some money on his glasses. Mine are normally Home Depot, $5, and and so, but he didn't have any glare, and like right now I can see glare on my own eyes, which I bought these for like $15. I really splurged.
You really went all out, man. Dude,
And
you
I
getting
bought
the
2 pairs for
fancy.
actually it might have been 2 pairs for $15, and I already broke one. But this one made it through to this week, and it's slightly less glare. I was pretty excited about that. Okay, now in the 80s movies category, have you seen the original Dune?
Dude, I tried to watch that like a couple different times when I was young, and it was so boring. So
I'm
boring.
not sure I can do this podcast anymore.
Dude, it's so boring.
No, it's really good. Did you
Was
know
it
that they
because I was
remade it?
like was it because I was like 14 years old or 12 years old? Is that why it
Yeah,
was boring?
probably your patience for an actual storyline was probably pretty bad.
What is the story? It's like nothing happened.
Really? Is that what you think?
Okay, I honestly, I really probably was 12 years old. I probably watched about 30 minutes and was like, this
Yeah,
is stupid. And I turned it off because it was
go back and
so
watch it
boring.
again. I mean, the original one I thought was good, and they have made a remake now. And
I knew
the
that. I haven't
second,
watched the remake.
I think there's either 2 or 3 sections or movies that are based on the one movie from the 80s, which like the first one, the remake. I loved it. Um, a couple criticisms, but anyway, good one for you to go watch. 80s movie.
Okay, I'll
Blade
try.
Runner. Seen Blade Runner?
No.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
another good one. A lot of existential questions there.
Blade Runner is Harrison Ford, right?
Yeah, Harrison Ford, Rucker Hauer was
Okay.
the
Director.
main villain. No, the Ridley Scott was
Oh.
the director.
Okay.
But some really cool existential questions about what it is to be alive, what it is to be human, done in kind of Ridley Scott dark themes. And then
Mm-hmm.
they did a Blade Runner 2048, which I really liked as well.
Okay.
It's not often that they make a remake of a movie or a redo where it's better than the original, but those two might be Dune and Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Did you ever see Rad
No.
in
No,
the
no,
80s?
what's
Is a
Rad?
BMX movie from the 80s. Rad.
Okay. Well,
I'm not telling you to go watch it,
maybe
but it was good.
Rad. So yeah,
Don't go watch it. Don't go
no,
watch it. You'll be
I have.
disappointed.
Sometimes I've got to write stuff down when we talk about it so that I can remember to go see it. But I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm adding Rad. Okay,
Oh,
so
it's so good.
what was the topic you want to talk about this week? Like
I,
transitions to head down?
yeah, honestly, I wanted to talk about. I thought it'd be fun to talk about just vertical transitions, both directions, all different types of transitions. So whether you're flying head up and transitioning to head down, or vice versa. I mean, I think most people would probably. It seems to me like going from head down to head up is way easier for most people. Seems like that's like last in the progression. So that's the last thing that you learn. So it's probably the easiest one. Do you think that's right?
Head
Head
down to
down,
head up.
head down to head up. Seems to be easiest.
Yeah, yeah. Seems easier. Head down to head up seems easier to you than head up to head down.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that.
And I don't know why it seems that way.
Well, I think when you whoops, I sent you that text and not to the person that I meant to send that to. Oh, she knows that. Sorry, my lawyer called and I need to call her back. So I think that the two orientations of belly fly and sit fly or head up, whatever, are the easiest for people to wrap their brains around because it is the way that we have viewed the world most of our lives. I'm sitting now, and if I go on my belly, my chin's still up, and I'm still looking forward at the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, going to back fly or going to head down are both a challenge for people to get their brain wrapped around the different visuals that happen. And so, I would agree that the head up to head down transition is a little bit more challenging because when you get to your destination of head down, your brain is, especially in the beginning, it's just it just doesn't have a grab on kind of that visual. And similarly, backfly, they're trying to look down through their legs and make it a normal way of viewing the world, but a lot of times you really need to pick your head up and look at what's behind you, which makes for a somewhat messy visual in the beginning. So just based on that, I would totally agree that that transition is a little bit easier because you're returning to head up, which makes sense again for your brain. As you know, the progression that happens in the tunnel is somewhat in the initial stages based on sort of difficulty, where backfly is a tiny bit more difficult than belly, and head up is a little bit more difficult than back. But then I think that changes, and it's only based on wind speed after that, where head down is, in my opinion, not the holy grail of flying in terms of difficulty, but actually head up is significantly harder. But because of that progression that head up comes before head down, people have done a lot of head up in that very natural viewing state, and so they're in a pretty comfortable place mentally. And then when they start going head down, that sort of uncomfortableness comes in a couple different ways. So
yeah,
I think we make it harder than it is. The physical components of the transition are no more difficult one way or the other, in my opinion. It's mostly mental.
Okay. Yeah, I think part of what made me think about this is when we were filming the Crave course with you guys in Florida, and we jumped in the tunnel, and you were actually helping me and coaching me, giving me some tips, pointers on like those kind of cartwheel transitions. Yep. Do you remember that?
I wouldn't probably, to be honest, but I remember from watching the Crave course, the little clips of our course that I've seen over, I don't know, last months. And I wouldn't have even remembered that I was in my green suit, but then I saw the video and there we are. And we did a little VFS, and I was talking to you about different transitions, but yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, I was thinking about that, remembering, some of the help that you were giving me, but then also just watching Steph, her transition. I mean, you too. I don't mean it like that, but I was just blown away at how easy she made it look and how clean. Like, it was just so. It seemed perfect every time. Like, she didn't move anywhere. It was like so awesome. And for me at that time, it was like, I can do all those transitions, but to do them that clean and to stay in exactly the same spot, I definitely can't do that, And so that was just fun for one thing, but also I was like, as I was thinking about this week and recording, I was like, man, I think people would really appreciate hearing some tips and some instructions and coaching on different types of vertical transitions. That was just my thought. I think it'd be fun for people to kind of hear from you guys, or from you, and what you can share from what Steph might say.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to back up to what you said, that you can't do that, which is wrong. You can. You just haven't yet. You haven't. I mean, one of the things that when I'm talking to students that I try to work pretty hard to reinforce with them is that there's nothing typically magical about what we do. Like, there are, of course, natural ability sets that people have, and the truth is that sometimes people aren't as athletic or as athletically gifted as other people. But I would argue that given enough time and practice, that people can reach a very comparable level. There will always be, I don't know, pick somebody that you think is absolutely exceptional. Rafa Schwager, Ben Rohn, back in the day, Julian Guillot, like some of these flyers. I don't know who I would necessarily throw out there right at this moment, other than those guys, but just examples of really, really good flyers. And so, well, actually, between me and Steph, that's a really good comparison, I think, because I'm much more of a grinder of like, I need to just do this thing over and over and over again to try and refine the thing. And I think Steph is much more gifted just naturally on those things. And it's not that she didn't work hard or do a million transitions. It's just, hers are better even after all this time. And considering she has a bunch less jumps than me and a lot less tunnel time, then I think that means that means that she's just naturally more gifted than I am. But if you can think of it in terms of like, I like to equate it to people riding their bike. And when, you've got kids, you taught them how to ride a bike, and they had training wheels, and that was to keep them from kind of hurting themselves as they didn't understand the balance points. And then over time you took a training wheel off, or maybe you took them both off at the same time. But, for most people, it's just a question of riding that bike enough times that they're comfortable, and let's take those training wheels off. So as far as what accomplishes the transition, so in super, super broad terms, I think it's important for people to just get the general concept of the transition generally is creating lift on one side of your body and creating sink on the other side. And so that you have some axis of rotation, and a lot of people listen to this podcast have probably tried, like, say, a barrel roll transition, where you create an imbalance on one side with your legs of lift, and then a smaller profile on the other side, and it rolls you over. Or you do a over the feet transition, where you're either back to belly or belly to back, and on your head end you need to create a bunch of lift, and then on your feet end you need to create some sink, and that imbalance takes you over. And if you can just kind of conceptualize that idea, then moving on to sit to head down transitions, if you think about most people learn a backflip first, that you are creating sink in your upper body by sort of collapsing your arms and your shoulders. That starts my rotation back towards my back, and then my feet come up and my lower legs get lift, and that completes the transition. So, and I mean, that's obviously a big simplification, but it at least touches on the overall theme of how you transition from one flight type to another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you are there any specifics that you can think of or that you could share? Like if you were coaching, if you and I were in the tunnel and you were coaching me and teaching me how to do that sit to head down transition going backwards, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that half back flip, essentially.
Oh yeah. They're like back wheel or cart flip or whatever. The marriage of those two ideas.
What are the tips? And because I think this could be helpful in a few different ways. For people who are actually trying to learn that, they're working with somebody in the tunnel, or they're trying it out in the sky. For one, you might share something, give a tip to one of them, but also for coaches. Like for me, as a person who sometimes has an opportunity to coach other people on these skills, and I'd like to walk through, this first we can talk about going backwards, then we can talk about going forwards, and maybe even cartwheels side to side. But I think there's, kind of two different groups of people that can benefit from this.
Yeah. I think that as a coach, when you mentioned something about watching Steph and she doesn't move and she gets no lift and she stays perfectly in place or whatever, of course, it's not perfect. There are micro movements, but very, very good. But I think that if you like, movement analysis is something that anyone can do, and coaches generally have just done more of it than the students, and they understand how to pass on ideas about moving through the wind because of the movement analysis. So if you went back and look at the video that whatever inspired you to say that, I would argue that, again, in very broad terms, she is only giving to the wind the absolute minimum surface area that she needs to complete the transition. And so a lot of times when I'm coaching people in this, again, very broad terms, that as they pass the horizontal, whatever imaginary line is perpendicular to the flow of the wind, you have to only give the wind the absolute minimum that you need in that moment. Because if you look at Steph's backflip, her arm's going to be in, she's going to be very small, curving her back, and her legs are only going to extend when she gets above the wind line, above that horizontal wind line. And even kind of late in that process, like she's almost vertical and her legs come out, so that the wind doesn't have anything to grab onto. And so, or if you watch, I not to toot my own horn, I think I've done so many cartwheels, and I think they're pretty good. But if you slowed down the video of me as I cross the wind line, my body is a ball. Like there is just nothing out in the wind, nothing for the wind to grab onto to push me someplace that I don't want to be in that moment. And so it ends up being on level and in place, or even, I can cartwheel and dive and change level in the cartwheel. And that's, again, it's just practice, but it's also recognizing that, like when I looked at the videos, the Crave course, when I was, watching you transition, man, you got a lot of stuff out in the wind. And so it's not good or bad per se. What's what you need in that moment. But if you want to stay in place and on level, your arms being out in the transition is very sort of unregulated movement. The wind is going to oblige whatever you ask for. If you say you want to move, it's going to say no problem, I'll move you there. It's just a column of air that you're falling through or flying through. So if you're not getting what you want out of your transition, probably take a look at the video and see what you're giving the wind and whatever it is. I mean, again, it's not rocket science. It's just movement analysis and looking at, I'm pushing wind this way and I'm going this way. And so I know that's really super broad terms, but so when
it is actually kind of, I think on all levels, but especially when you're learning something new, it really is hard to minimize your movements. Like that's a struggle that, I see that with first time flyers. And then I see that with people, myself included, when you kind of go back to a new student, as in a sense, like what I mean is like when you're learning something new, like you're really learning a new movement or a new skill, you kind of revert back to that, like way too much, too big of movements, too much stuff. And I don't know why that is, but it is actually hard to stay small. It's hard to move a tiny bit.
Okay, let me address that. So, are you an AFF instructor?
No.
Have you been on the plane when a student is going to do their hop and pop, their 5-5?
Sure, yeah.
You ever watched them go out?
Lots of times, yeah.
Lots of times. Okay, you've seen it. You ever see them rolling up the windows and kicking their legs? I'm on a 5-5. I'm scared. This is my pull altitude. And have you seen that? I mean, it happens all the time. Like, it's so rare for an AFF student on a 5-5 on their hop and pop, or the 3-5, whichever one. They get freaked out on both. For them to come out and be a square student and just calmly go into the wind is so common for them to be like pinwheeling their arms and legs.
I see what you're saying.
That's not an effective way to fly. And if you could, in the moment, if you had telepathy with that person, you would just reach out and be like, hey, stop that. Stop. Hold still. Everything's going to be okay. What you're doing right now is way, way worse. Do they need to be pinwheeling their arms and legs?
No.
They are actually doing significantly more than is required to be successful at that moment. And so as a coach, I mean, what could you say? Stop that. Hold still. And that's just a sort of a microcosm of, well, when I cartwheel, I have to put my arms out. Have you tried? Not, because I'm guaranteeing you that it's way easier when you don't do that. Not only in just the physical effort that you expend, but also in the result that you get. It's more, it's cleaner, it's easier. So if you can keep that in mind, of the AFF student who does not need to roll the windows down on the way out the plane, you can also hold your appendages still as you transition. It's not to get too matrix-y, but it's all in your mind.
No, I think you're right on. That's you summed it up, man.
And so if you recognize, again, that what those horizontal and vertical lines, imaginary lines you draw through the wind, if you recognize that horizontal in your transition, just pause it right there. When your spine is aligned with that horizontal moment, pause the video. What do you have out? What do I have out right now? And if it's not this and this, it's too much. And okay, so there's a qualifier there. If we're doing low speed dynamic and you cross the wind line as a curled up little ball, you're finding the net, and because that's not what's required in that moment. But if you're trying to do VFS at 100%, then what I said applies pretty strictly. And okay, does that cover the general?
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful.
So if we move into like the specifics of the actual, you said back wheel. So generally, we teach a back wheel starting with just a straight backflip. Wherever you want to face, Steph will fly behind them in a head down orientation, holding one of their hands if they're kind of up in a sitting on the net, and I will grip them at the shoulder and assist the transition, kind of run safety there, as long as the tunnel allows us to do that. And so that's the very beginning. You are ready from your supported head down days, which means you grabbed the net, you went head down, you came up off the net, and eventually you were able to come up off the net without the assistance of a coach or the instructor, and then you can try backflips
Hold
head
on,
down.
just one
Yeah. The doll.
Yeah. Do you have one?
I'm on a jumping trip to California, and I didn't bring my doll.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this doll's not very good, but whatever.
It's okay.
Yeah. So just for, I mean, I think probably most people know what you're talking about, but just to make sure. So you're in a head up position.
Your feet are on the net.
And then going
that way
to a head down.
Right.
That's what we're talking about right now.
Yep. Back to, sit to head down, backflip.
Yeah.
So once you can sit to head down, backflip with your feet on the net and no more assistance from either the flyer or the spotter, then you start flying your feet off the net. We go back to a spot, and you do that transition. Once you can do the transition on your own from a flying position, comfortably stop, head down, fly 5, 6, 7 seconds, and then comfortably transition back to a sit, then the next step would be that whatever say you were facing the driver the whole time, then we want you to start picking different headings, so that you kind of wrap your brain around any way that you're looking is okay. And when you first landing head down, that's actually quite a bit harder than you think. Just to change that initial visual will freak you out a little bit. And then once you've got that, we're going to start telling you that we want a 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence from you, where 1 is your sit flying towards me, the coach, whoever. 2, you turn your body sideways, but you try to keep the coach in your visual awareness on your side left. So you've turned about 90 degrees, pause. So this is 1, facing you. 2, okay, turning 90 degrees, but keeping an eye on the coach. 3, executing the backflip. And then 4, turning 90 degrees back to be facing in towards your coach. And the biggest hurdle in that whole sequence typically is keeping the coach in your visual awareness as you turn 90 degrees off of their heading. That, like, people just have a really tough time turning their head, but then having their body execute the backflip. That takes a little bit of time. And then hopefully, obviously, once you can do that comfortably in each direction, then we want you to do a 1, 2, 3, 4, where the movements become blended together, and you don't necessarily pause the sit rotational energy at 90 degrees. You allow it to continue past 90 degrees while you're executing the backflip, so that by the time you finish, you are in facing to your coach. And so the steps are blurred together.
It just becomes one smooth transition.
Yeah. Yep. And when
so it'd be starting facing you.
Yep. That's 1.
Turn.
2.
But keeping your head facing, right?
Yep.
I mean, you can't really see with the guy.
You need a little Sharpie.
Yeah. Then 3 is initiating the backflip.
Yep.
And 4 is turning back towards the coach. Right?
Yep.
Of course, his feet would be different at that point.
Shelf or Daffy, whatever.
Yeah. And then, sorry?
How do you start teaching people head down? Do you start in Daffy or do you start in Shelf?
I really tell them whatever if they feel more comfortable in one or the other, I have no problem with them starting with either one. It seems to me, I like so it seems like Shelf is just a simpler, like it's easier for people to kind of relax their brain and just keep both legs the same. Like that seems a little bit simpler for people, but I think Daffy is a much more versatile position. So the quicker you can learn Daffy, the more versatile and control you're going to have, is what it seems like to me. So I think if I if they're asking me which one they need to learn first, I think Daffy is more helpful. It's a better one to use. You're going to use it more in the sky, especially, but I don't have a strong position one way or the other. Is there something, can you give me some insight?
I was going to say very similar to what you said, that we like to teach people shelf first because it's a little bit more intuitive as far as your alignment between your knees, your hips, and your shoulders and your head. Where Daffy people can get a little bit cockeyed in their hips. And if you can fly shelf head down, then switching your legs as you're comfortable head down, switching your legs is no big deal. And for sure, I agree that Daffy is something that you need in your toolbox, 100%. But yeah, shelf seems a little bit simpler to start. Let's see. So I was going to add that I used to be a very strict adherent to the idea that a straight cartwheel was the absolute holy grail of transitions. And then when we were on a team, Steph and I were on a team in Dubai with one of our teammates was named Timmy. He had learned a little bit after me and learned the back wheel that we just talked about. And he was blazing fast, like at least as fast as I was with a strict cartwheel. And I sort of gave up on that. I mean, once you experience that something is equally good or better, it's hard to hold on to your ideology of, hey, my cartwheel is the thing. Although I really like that I have a cartwheel, but that back wheel is incredibly effective.
Yeah, the back wheel seems easy to do. Like, I don't know. Whereas a cartwheel, for some reason, that just seems it's more difficult. It's hard.
It is a little bit harder because you've got to work on maintaining the the alignment of your shoulders. And making sure that your back doesn't lay down on the wind when you do it, and keeping yourself like if you were to somehow live through the experience of shoving a steel rod through your belly button, that needs to be your axis of rotation. And if you go shoulder forward and lay your back on the wind, it's not going to work.
Maybe that's what I'm doing.
You don't have a steel rod shoved through your stomach.
Yeah. I haven't played around with them in quite a while, but I'm supposed to work at the tunnel in a few days, so I'm gonna do some cartwheels and send you the video.
So I think we've talked about it before.
Garbage.
No, I won't say that. But if you take a dry erase and put a little circle on the wall on the outside, it can really help to have a point of focus. I mean, you can use the driver, but sometimes for I know at least when I was an instructor, we used to stage, and then you're just kind of picking an arbitrary point to focus on. But having that, just a circle, it gives you something external to reference your transition and see how you did.
So what other tips or things, what are the things that you find yourself repeating over and over when you're teaching people those transitions? I know it's kind of hard to think when you're not actually coaching it or doing it in the tunnel. Sometimes it's hard to remember what.
Well, but people forget a lot that the initiation is basically in your chest and your arms, and it's not kicking your legs out. Although that it does work. Like if you put your legs on the horizontal, you're going, but it's just too much lift and drive generally. And so we really try to make sure that people understand from the very beginning that, hey, this is initiated by either bringing your arms in or rolling your shoulders forward, kind of taking your sternum in, curving your back, whatever words get through to you, that the upper body starts going down before the lower body starts going up. Because generally those transitions, I'm guessing you spotted some of them, they end up looping where the head becomes probably the axis of rotation, that the body goes around the head, where ideally, if we're free flying together, you want your head and your hips to trade places whichever way you go, so that your center point basically stays the same relative to the group that you're flying with. That's a huge, not failing, but sort of part of the learning curve that is very common for people to mess up, is thinking they got to kick their legs out to accomplish it. And we'll get people who are on VFS teams who are still kicking their legs out to do it. And they're like, man, I'm never on level. Why is that happening? And like, okay, but we got to go back quite a few steps here to
Yeah.
work on your individual transition, because it's just not going to work in a group when you give the wind that much to work with.
Yeah. I when I was learning that specific transition, the our lead instructor at that time, his name was Ivan, super awesome guy, fantastic like his coaching style just was perfect for me. You know how sometimes like there's just different people, for whatever reason, the way that he would coach me was like so awesome. He always gave me enough freedom and enough room, but I always knew he was there to like keep me safe, but he also just instilled a lot of confidence in me. And for me that was so awesome. Like having his confidence really helped me. But he would also make things into a game. And so then I wouldn't even realize what he was getting me to do because I was just trying to do this game, you know? And so one of the things when I was learning that, he started telling me, he's like, I had been doing something, and he wouldn't tell me that I was doing it wrong. He'd just be like, okay, now I want you to try to do this. And what he was doing is saying, you're doing it wrong, but I'm going to give you a game to fix it, you know, and say, I want you to see when you do that transition from, you know, sit fly to head down. He's like, I want you to see how close can you get your head to the net when you do that transition. So
Yeah.
he was forcing me to like sink my body down below my waist. And it made it into a game where he's like, all right, watch me, see if you can do it like I do it. See if you can stay how low I stay low. And it just made it so fun. And then next thing I knew, he's like, now look at this video. Do you see the difference? He'd talk me through what I had done differently and and he's like, that's what you need to do. And it really, it's just so helpful.
That's an interesting, I mean, all of it was super interesting, but if number one, if you could hold on to those things that you appreciated as a student and try to emulate that as a coach, I think that'd be great. And then the other thing is that way back in my career, somebody and I were joking around about like we need little labels on ourselves. And so I made up a little sticker. If I haven't told you this, it just said I cork. And I was like, it'd be great if on the 5-minute call and you're in the loading area and somebody walks up and like, hey man, can I join your 3-way free fly? But they had a sign on there that says, I'm gonna not break off at the appropriate altitude and I'm gonna track back through the middle or something like that. So you could say yes, but you would know what
But
you're
you at
getting
least know
into,
what you're getting into.
But if we could somehow match coaching styles with coaching students, that would be fantastic. If you just,
Yeah.
or if a specific coach was, had enough tools in the kit to say, hey, what kind of learner are you? Like, and as a for instance, I did have a coach who asked me that when I first started getting free fly coaching, and I said that I would like harsh criticism and insults, and I don't need any fluff. If I do something right, you can give me a thumbs up and let's move on. But if I'm doing it wrong, I don't really want to be glad-handed. I want you to tell me I'm fucking it up, and I'll try and get on with it. But not everybody's like that, Some people need gold stars on their helmet or whatever, but it'd be great if we all, what's that Latin expression that's know thyself? If we all
From the
had that.
Matrix, yeah.
Yeah. And we could say, oh, well, you know what? You're just not the right coach for me. And I think you're going to tell me I'm full of shit and I'm a terrible flyer, but I need somebody who's going to fluff me a little bit, or,
Yeah, or whatever.
That would be such a time saver on everybody's learning curve and frustration level.
Yeah. Ivan was always kind of like nonchalant about stuff. I'd be like, hey, this is when I was pretty new in the tunnel. And I was like, is it hard to like, what if I wanted to like jump in the door, like jump in on my back? Is that hard? Can you do that? And he's like, I mean, obviously he knew the answer, I mean, he's like, oh, try it. Just do it. See what happens. Like that's, he was always telling me, just try it.
And it worked.
Yeah, it worked. It was fine.
Yeah.
But he was a really good coach.
Where's he at now?
He's a pilot. He's got he does like that's like private pilot. What do you call it? Like like super rich people have like super nice jet and he flies them all over, like whatever you call that.
Yeah, there's Rook and I were just talking about a jet company. Yeah. And then a friend, like, at what point of your wealthiness do you need a jet? Like, how rich do you have to be before you don't just fly first class?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like, can you imagine how expensive it is to own and maintain a jet?
A
Like,
jet.
dude,
And
that's
then
gotta be.
like a friend of ours, of mine and Steph's, she flies for one of the jet companies that's just I can't remember the name, but it's like the big rental basically where you I think you pay a certain amount per year and then you get a number of blade hours and you just got to
Oh,
make
it's
sure
kind of
you
like a charter, kind of, but it's
kinda you're
like
like
a
a
membership
member in a
charter.
jet club.
Huh.
Yeah. But again, we were talking about like how like if you're going to spend, I don't know, 70 grand a year on being a member, like how much flying do you really do? It's crazy. And then I had a friend who was a pilot for one of those companies, and the the customer showed up, and I mean he's a good pilot. It's a friend of mine named Heath. He's a really good pilot, and he's been, I don't know, thousands and thousands of hours. And his very first flight, he said the customer showed up, the car pulled up, and the guy gets out and he's like doing the pre-flight walk around or something, and the customer's like, that's my bag. There's two more in the trunk. To Heath, who was like, well, okay, I guess this is my job. So he's
Oh, okay.
he's feeling like this real high class pilot, and then he's just like a basically a porter loading the bags.
All right.
uh, but anyway, so yeah, I don't know how we got on that one. Do you think that we covered the transitions enough?
Well, I mean, I think people will be interested to know like if there's any other tips or like specifics of those transitions, things that they need to think about or need to do, or um,
It is hard to say when I'm not looking at an individual
yeah,
because people do so many different things when you do get them flying in the wind. But generally, I would go back to like if you're having trouble with, oh, this is actually a good trick, and you can try this as a coach. Like people who are doing transitions to head down, they've done a bunch of supported head down. They've grabbed the net, they've come up off the net, they can fly, they can take grips, they can turn 360s, all the things that you get people to do before you really want them to start sending it on transitions. So if people are missing their sit to head down transition for whatever reason, if our students miss twice in a row, okay, go back, grab the net, come up, fly, pause and look at me, transition to a sit, we'll pick up the dock, transition back to head down. And you try and sort of trick your brain into snapping in and out of that position where
mm,
your muscles kind of remember, hey, I was just doing this. I was just looking this direction. I was, and in our case, when we do have Steph and I both coaching, Steph will fly with them. They'll come up off the net. She'll fly right in front of him, them, whoever. Okay, quick, back down to the net. Let me pick up the dock, and up you go. And many times that is the most successful transition they have, where
mm,
their brain is fully wrapped around the fact that they were head down. This is the visual. I'm only out of it for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and I'm right back
mm,
into it. So instead of kind of beating yourself against the wall, like I missed that transition. Okay, I missed another one. I missed another one. I missed another one. And I think for students, that's when frustration can kind of start to set in. Just have them go back to something that's just a tiny bit more comfortable, that which
mm-hmm.
they perceive as the easy thing. Like, oh, I know I can do that. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Let me fly on my head, and then many times high success rate of sort of tricking yourself into the transition is
yeah.
really not that hard. It's just getting your head around it.
That's a good coaching tip right there, man. That's
It
really
works
good.
a lot.
Yeah, I like that. Just and you're because you're doing quite a few different things, but you're also just getting them to relax their mind. Like stop thinking about it so hard. Just do it.
Right. So if you think
That's
about
good.
the story you just told about, hey, can I jump in on my back? Is that cool? Or making a kind of a game out of it, like, yeah, it's trying to get them out of their own head of like, oh my god, this is the hardest, scariest thing I've ever done. To
Mm-hmm.
nah, it's really not. Like it's,
Yeah,
you know how to fly head down.
yeah.
It's
That's
just
cool.
passing the horizontal.
Yeah, awesome.
If I think of any other
Um,
tricks, I'll try and add them, but that might be it.
what about specifically for those cartwheel transitions? Because those are, I mean, whether or not somebody needs that in their toolbox, I don't
Mm.
know that they need that in their toolbox, but it's a fun thing to do and it's cool to learn and work on, and especially in the sky where it's relatively safe. You and a friend on a two-way, you're doing some head up, head down, some free flying, and you want to try those. Um,
So if you hold up the doll,
yeah.
um, the biggest theoretical thing here. So if you turn sideways, okay, so now again, you have to have lift on one end and sink on the other. So let's say the doll's head is going to come towards the camera. So if you put
Like
yeah,
this.
that way. If you put his arms out in more of a head up position.
Can I face him this way so people can
Sure.
see?
Yep. And again, we're going to go to the doll's right, which at this moment is also your right.
Okay,
Bring his
I'm terrible with right and left. So you mean this
That's
way?
okay. That way. Yep. So bring the doll's right arm all the way in across its torso. Yep. And like you're hugging your own stomach. Yep. Cool. Now, if you look at that sit picture, an imbalance has been created with lift on the doll's left side, where the wind is continuing to hit the doll's left arm, creating
Right
an
here.
upward movement that way. The right arm is out of the picture, creating downward movement on that side. That in itself can be enough to create that transition. But now, if you face the doll again to the side, the challenging part of this, can you straighten up the torso like it would be in a head up position? Yeah, there you go. The challenging part of this is even as you roll the doll over with your hand, shoulders and hips need to stay vertically aligned.
As
And that,
opposed to
as
what?
opposed to
What
say,
do you mean? Sorry.
well, imagine that I'm in a sit position that you just had the doll in. I bring my right arm in the way that you brought it in for the doll, but my right shoulder digs forward.
Oh, okay. So
That,
don't let him do this.
right.
Don't let
It
him
twists your spine, number one, just like you're doing to the doll, but it also overexposes your back as you go. And all you want to show to the wind
like
is
that, not like
right,
that,
exactly. And that means you're just going to blast halfway up the tunnel because you just back flew through the transition.
which is probably what I do.
Probably. So the quick fix, if you go back to the sit position with the doll,
Yeah.
and think about now, point it to the side so the right arm is to the camera. Turn to the side. As you tuck his arm down, keep your elbow behind your ribs.
Keep this elbow behind the ribs or
Behind
this
the
tucked
ribs.
elbow?
The one that you're going to tuck in, which is the right, as we did it before.
Keep it back behind the ribs?
You're doing the left. You're doing the left.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the one towards the camera. As you bring it down to tuck it in,
Bring
keep
this
your
one down?
elbow. Yep, keep the elbow behind the ribs. Pulling your elbow back like that generally keeps your shoulders and your hips square as you do the transition. So it's when people are here and they try this by sending their arm forward that their shoulder follows their arm forward and they end up on their back.
Dude, you know what's that's crazy, JRuss. Okay. I mean, it's really not that crazy, but there was a one time, oh gosh, this was a long time ago, 4 years ago. I was trying these transitions, and Drew Steele was in San Antonio. He was just there he just stopped in and was coaching a bunch of us in the tunnel. And he was helping me try to learn. It was the first time I was ever trying to learn. And I remember him telling me to pull that elbow back. And that's what he was having me do.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
No,
Were you done?
a little bit. I mean, when you're doing this one, you can have, depending on the tunnel that you're at, and of course the ratings of the instructors and their confidence level, you can have a cross grip with an instructor behind that helps keep your alignment as you go over, and they sort of, okay, if you're going this way, I've got to swing this way with my arms, and that can really help. You can have a grip with the coach in the front, sort of a overhand grip. If I'm the coach standing in front of your doll, I would grip overhand with his left, bring that left over, and have a tactile reference for positioning. That can be helpful. Another super, super important thing, even if you bring your elbow back the way that we said to try and keep your shoulders square, you have to have a visual in front. And again, this is a really difficult thing for people, is that as most people learn a new thing, myself included, your awareness just shrinks way, way, way down. And you're so overwhelmed by the newness of what you're doing and the unfamiliarity of it that you're you're back to like, I can't see anything. Like my
Yeah.
awareness is so small. And then you like, say you nail the transition, you're head down, you're like, oh my God, I'm head down. Like as if, you know, I just sprinkled fairy dust in your jumpsuit and you made a magic transition. But if you can start as early as you can, training yourself to like, this I fly whatever coach is in front of me, I'm going to look at his belly button. I'm going to look at the iFly logo on his chest, or whatever tunnel that you're flying in. Just pick something on as a reference point, and don't stop looking at that reference as you do the transition, because wherever you are looking, when you're not looking forward through your transition as you would like through the center of a formation or to your buddy that you're flying with, when you're not looking at that, you are probably looking at the wrong thing. Similar to when you coach people to backfly and they want to stare at their legs as if that's going to be helpful. And you're like, no, pick your chin up. That's like you're sinking your chest and you're going back down to the net. We can't fly like this. Like pick your chin up and look in the right place. So if you're not nailing your transition to head down, that's probably at least a part of the equation.
All right. Last one, the forward sit fly to head down, but forward flip.
Front flip.
Yeah.
So this one is a challenge. And the biggest challenge that I think that people face, I mean, this one should come later in the progression, probably the last. Like you want to have a backflip super solid, you want to have a back wheel or a cartwheel super solid, and then potentially trying front flips. And they get that, of course, that's my opinion. But because of the difficulty of this huge surface area passing the horizontal, where you really need to kind of snake your body, you know what I mean? Like you can't lay your chest flat on the wind, or you're just going way up. So you got to kind of snake yourself through that transition where you almost do a crunch in your tummy and you really thrust your head downward towards the net where you bend, you know what I mean? Like you just can't flatten out.
No, I've had a couple people where I'm like, put your head between your crotch, like put your head in your crotch. Like,
there's another big difficulty there, in that a lot of times, many coaches, myself included, will teach a sit to sit front flip, basically uncoached. Just go sit to sit front flip. Like it's not that hard. Try
just do it.
Like generally speaking, anybody who's been a child has been able to at least conceptualize into water or on a trampoline. A front flip is very intuitive. However, once you get somebody good at a sit to sit front flip, getting them sit to head front flip and stopping the motion halfway is actually quite difficult. They just plow through the whole thing. So that's why I would say that the sit to head front flip is very late in the progression for me, so that they're very comfortable with the finished position of flying head down. So they know when to stop. Otherwise they just roll through the whole thing.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Dude, I think that's helpful. I mean, as much as we can do, just talking with a doll over the computer screen.
Wanted to share with you, and I keep wanting to say this. We went down to DeLand. What were we down there for? Oh, Sebastian Invasion. But we have a friend living in DeLand, the guy that owns Firebird, who is our container sponsor. He's a good friend. So we went down to visit him, and he had a German guy, Marco, who's 500 maybe or 1,000 jumps. And he's moving over to Thailand, and he asked me, do I know anybody in Thailand? Which I do. And so I hooked them up for jumping. But then also he said, hey, like, is there anything out there for like reference materials for like, how can I learn stuff? And I was just you got to be, am I being punked right now? Is Ashton Kutcher?
Are you messing with me?
What's happening?
Where's the hidden camera?
And then I was like, well, Marco, to be honest, like Steph and I did this sort of, I usually describe Crave as like a master class on different things in skydiving.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, really? And George, the Firebird owner, was like, yeah, JRuss does a podcast and they talk about skydiving. And so I directed him to the website, and I said, okay, well, this is how you find the show. And then he starts looking through the website, and he's like, Inca's course, and he knows Kurt and Jeannie, and he's taking courses from them. And he knows, I think he knows Pete Allen, although was Pete's course up yet or not
yet?
Quite?
It's not.
Okay.
We're still working on it.
Yeah. So I was just Larry Henderson. I was rattling off the people that I know that are in the course, and he's like, man, how much is this? And I was like, it's $15 a month. What? And I said, yeah, it's 15, $16 a month, something like that. You can cancel anytime you want. he paid for it right then. He's like, I can't even believe I don't know about this. And he messaged me later. He's like, I watched your course. It was great. Like, and yeah, it just made me think again of like, if somehow there's got to be getting a $15 a month subscription that you can have access to all of these OGs in the sport who are, trying to share their knowledge. And this, granted, Marco is my age or old. I bet he's probably 58. So a little bit more, what's the right word? A little bit more tuned in to the idea of not just full send, but let me research this stuff before I try and go like a 19-year-old might. But anyway, I thought you'd appreciate that story, and I was sharing on air. It was awesome. A great one. It was just very good. It's like when you go through a sales training course, which of course I didn't do for Crave, but I used to sell Cutco knives when I was right out of college, and they train you on like the specific things to say, blah blah blah. So, and when it works, like you say the things, and the customer says back like you were exactly trained. You're like, hey, do you know this gig, or is it just working? So when Marco was like, $16, are you crazy?
What?
And, yeah, like it was like,
cancel any time,
right?
No way.
But I figured you'd appreciate that story. One more Crave customer, and
Thank you.
16 big smackers in your pocket.
Well, I got a story for you. Okay. The guy that's doing the subtitles, the Portuguese subtitles.
Oh, really?
Have you?
You might have mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's worked through. I think he's just got maybe the movement course he's wrapping up, and then Inca's course. Okay. I think he's been saving Inca's course for last week. It's like 7 hours of content. This is so much stuff.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's so. There's so much stuff in there. It's so good, dude. It's really, really good. Anyway, after he's done all the courses except for Inca's, and he WhatsApped to me the other day. He's like, dude, I just finished doing the English versions of because he does everything in English first because it's easy. He can just throw it into like chat, one of the AIs. It'll spit out the English real easy. He's like, dude, I just did the vertical course. That course is, and he spelled out amazing, and he spelled it out with all these dashes and exclamation. He's like, that is by far the best course that you guys had. That is so awesome. Like he loved the vertical course. Like he absolutely loved it.
That's nice to hear. What's his name? Do you know his name?
Yeah, his name is Francisco. He's in Brazil. He's a really, really cool guy. He's an FF instructor, tandem instructor. He does some translation work with people for other stuff. But
you remember off the top of your head his last name?
I have it on my phone.
There's a guy that comes to big way events, Francisco Caos, Caos, who's big in the free fly community down in Boituva, which is the big drop zone in Brazil.
You want me to grab my phone and look real quick?
No, but when we're off air, maybe because I know a lot of Brazilians, and the guy that a good friend of ours, of me and Steph's, is Paulo Perez, who has been in the big ways for a number of years now, and he's very centric figure to the free fly community in Brazil. So we need to get you guys in touch.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've done it again.
You've learned something in an hour.
You've actually learned something. You spent the most wonderful, amazing hour of your life.
Could have been. It could be.
Maybe so.
It's not a waste.
Yeah. No, cool. You spent another hour with Chris and JRuss listening to us ramble and talk and goof off about skydiving and everything else. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening and being a part. Leave us some comments, man. Leave us some questions or other things that you guys want to hear about, want us to talk about. If you have other suggestions for topics that you'd like to learn, or guest people that we can have on the show, we'd love to hear that from you guys. So please share with us. And like we said, we haven't mentioned in a long time, but if you want to send us some video, we'll look at your video. Actually, we actually do, JRuss. We have a video from somebody. Shoot, I completely forgot. Somebody sent us a video. We need to pull that up next week.
Next week, okay.
And watch it. And I watched it. It was some angle flying. Really, really good job. Really great stuff. I don't know that we're gonna have any feedback to give, but if you have video of you doing something, you want some free coaching, you want some feedback or input, send us a video. We'll watch it. We'll give you some feedback on the air, man, for free. Free coaching.
Free.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks, JRuss. That was really
All
fun.
right. Yeah, thanks,
Everybody
Chris.
get out there, jump out of an airplane, have fun, crave, do more, be better.
See you guys.